Hershey's milk chocolate with whole almonds makes for a wholly amazing, wholly delicious experience that's, well, wholly Hershey's. Everyone should get to experience the satisfying surprise of a whole almond tucked inside creamy Hershey's chocolate. So don't wait your whole life to try Hershey's milk chocolate with whole almonds. And if you've already had it, then chances are you're already a lifelong fan of this confectionery delight. Find Hershey's milk chocolate with whole almonds wherever candy is sold.
Lowe's knows July 4th savings are worth celebrating. Right now, get up to 40% off select major appliances and get an additional 10% off 2 or more select major appliances. Plus, get 3 Scott's Naturescapes 1.5 cubic foot mulch bags for just $10. These deals are coming in hot. Lowe's, we help, you save. Valid through 7/9. Selection varies by location. While supplies last. See Lowe's.com for more details. Excludes Alaska and Hawaii.
Hey, warm up from the low. Welcome to lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Hoops Peterson, now part of the Easton Family Podcast. We've got a great podcast coming up for you as we're going to be joined in a few minutes by Paul Fritschner. He does such a tremendous job taking a look at this great game of college basketball. He's out there in the lovely city of Cincinnati. He does a great job covering all things for the Xavier Musketeers, but on top of that, I know that he's doing the Rebound Rundown Podcast. He's doing just such great work getting set for the upcoming season. We're going to be talking about 2 different things. We're going to be talking a lot about these year 1 coaches, and additionally, we're going to be talking a little bit about the ACC landscape. We've got 2 year 1 coaches out there in the Big East with Villanova and Xavier having some intrigue. We're also going to be talking about how some of these year 1 and year 2 coaches are doing it differently. Some of these guys planning a little bit for the seasons to come, and some of these guys, like a Will Wade, for example, that's going to be brought up. They're looking to go balls to walls year number 1. So we're going to have a great chat there with Paul, and that's going to be coming up here in a few minutes. A lot of 2-part chats because the news and nuts in college basketball went very, very bare, but you know what? We've got a lot to decipher in college basketball, and if you do have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you, for this podcast, you do have one of 2 ways to offer those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at gunit_81. Keep in mind, letters M, name does not matter, so as per usual, please do send these into the timeline. The other way is find an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated. From there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review. While I did not get in any Twitter/X questions today, everything is powered by EdgeBoost. EdgeBoost, making sure that bettors are able to access their funds anywhere and at any time. When you go to EdgeBoost.bet, utilize that promo code of Greg, G-R-E-G. That gets you a $1 match on your first deposit up to $25. And with EdgeBoost, you earn cashback rewards as you utilize it as well. Now let's chat with our good friend Paul Fritschner out there in the lovely city of Cincinnati. You're able to follow him on Twitter/X and his first and last name, Paul Fritschner. No space in between. That last name is spelled Fritschner. And Paul, it's great to get you aboard. Thank you.
Greg, always great to be with you.
It is always a pleasure, my friend, and certainly it is very interesting what we've been getting this offseason in college basketball, and no doubt we have seen a lot of coaching changes out there in your neck of the woods over at Xavier. They had one of the more notable ones as well, but who are some of the guys that you're really highlighting in terms of what they might be able to provide in their first year at a new school? Because I feel like the coaching carousel this offseason was about as rambunctious as we've seen in quite some time, and there's going to be some high expectations on these guys to hit the ground running right away.
There are, and I think one of the names that you look at, just staying in the Big East, the other coaching change, Kevin Willard going to Villanova. He's back in the Big East, and I was really, honestly, shocked to see him leave Maryland that quickly. And I know he loves the Big East. I know he loves being around, but I think it just didn't work with Kyle Neptune at Villanova. It always felt like Kyle was underneath the shadow of Jay Wright, and Jay was still there. It just never felt like Kyle Neptune had his own program. And that's not necessarily a slight on Jay Wright. It's nothing against Jay. It's just more so that it felt like Kyle never really established himself. But Kevin Willard is somebody who is very established in the college basketball scene. He's not going to get pushed around. He's not going to be somebody that feels like he has to bow down to anybody. He is going to run his own program. And I'm excited to see what Villanova brings to the table. I'm not sure it's going to happen this year. I think they did okay in the portal, but I wasn't overly thrilled with what they did in the portal. I think they're going to be decent, but not fantastic. It might take them a year to get their legs under them at Villanova. But what Kevin Willard has at Villanova now, trying to get that program back to where it was, I'm really interested to see how it plays out.
Yep, I am as well. And with Villanova, I thought that it was a little bit curious that they didn't perhaps do a little bit more in the transfer portal. How do you take a look at this roster for this upcoming season? Because I do think that with Willard, it's a really good hire for Villanova. I think that it's going to work out long term, but I do have a little bit of question mark as to how it might be looking in year number one.
Yeah, Bryce Lindsey, obviously a great pickup there from James Madison. You have 3 Maryland guys on this roster. So, again, you're just trying to mix some experience with some youth. You have a couple of freshmen as well mixed in there. So I just don't know, like I said, if this is the year for Villanova. It's probably going to take them a year or two because a lot of these guys on the roster have multiple years of eligibility. So from that perspective, you're building toward the future. But I just don't know if I see it this year.
Yep, absolutely. I think that it's going to be a little bit difficult when you still do have some experienced teams like a Creighton, for example. Obviously, UConn, I think, is going to be very good this season. And I think that Xavier, a team that is very much out there, your neck of the woods, is going to be interesting as well because they went very much a mid-major route in terms of bringing in a lot of their guys, like a Gabe Pizzato, who comes on over from Evansville after he put up some great production. Trey Green is going to be one of the main holdovers after he spent a little bit of time, albeit some banged-up time, but some time with the Xavier program, but I think that it's very curious to see how this works out because we've got a lot of guys that were very productive at a lower level trying to take a jump this season.
Yeah, no doubt. If you look at what Xavier's doing this year, you pick up some players, like you said, from all over. Missouri Valley specifically, you have Allwright, who transfers in from Valpo. And then, like you said, you have Gabe Pizzato, who comes in from Evansville. Those guys were neck and neck for Missouri Valley Freshman of the Year this year. I think Gabe Pizzato is probably going to be the best player on this Xavier team this season. And then you complement him with somebody I think has flown under the radar because he didn't play a ton of minutes this past season, and that's Anthony Robinson at Virginia. He didn't play a lot, but when he did play, he was impactful, and he's a big guy, 6'10". I think with his size, that's somebody that Xavier can really develop around. Again, similar to what I was talking about with Villanova, you have a new coach coming in who has won at the college basketball, or, who's won at the college level before. You're not seeing some of these NBA assistants that are starting to come down to the college ranks. These are Richard Pitino and Kevin Willard, 2 college basketball-centric coaches who have to rebuild their roster. And look, Xavier is returning 0% of their scoring from this past season. 0%, not a single point. Roddy Anderson is the only player that was even on the team this past season, but he was redshirting. He stayed. Other than that, it's an entirely new roster for this year. Going to be a ton of growing pains, but I think going forward, you can obviously see the vision where you have Pop Njai, Jovan Milicevic, Mir Panoam, some of these guys, Allwright, Anthony Robinson, Gabe Pizzato, players that have multiple years of eligibility.
Yep, it is going to be a sort of just build it up for a few years sort of system. And I think that is interesting. We see some of these coaches being able to work the transfer portal now in this day and age. As joining me on the show, we do have Paul Fritschner. He does great work over with Xavier Athletics. I know that he also does a great job with the Rebound Rundown Podcast, joining me right here on Coast to Coast Hoops. And I know that you were talking about Xavier trying to build it from the ground up. And how do you take a look at just sort of this chasm that we're seeing with some of these programs like a Xavier that they're clearly building for 2 to 3 years from now? Villanova, they're building up for being able to have a really good like year number 2, year number 3 under Kevin Willard. Meanwhile, you take a look at a team like an NC State, and it's very clear that they're going to be looking to win right now.
Yeah, you're exactly right. That's the kind of coach that Will Wade is, and I think they're going to be one of the hottest rosters going into this next season, right? They're going to be a team that everybody has circled, everybody's watching, and I'm really excited to see what Will Wade can do with this team. I think it's interesting you asked that, Greg, because in this day and age of NIL, you can't punt a season. I mean, these teams, even when you're talking about Xavier, talking about Villanova, and yeah, they might be back half of the Big East teams going into it, or at least that might be the expectation. But you're still spending millions of dollars on the roster. And you have to stay competitive. You have to still put a team out there that can win games in the Big East. But you can't just punt the season because that'll lead to donor fatigue. It'll lead to, just fatigue in general with the program, fans, all of that. So it's an interesting balance that you have to strike between understanding that there's a play for the future while at the same time trying to put together the best possible roster to make the NCAA tournament this upcoming season. It's really been fascinating for me looking at all of these different rosters from around the country and trying to figure out different coaches, what their strategies are, what they're trying to do, and how they're most effectively going about it. Everybody's had a different strategy. You look at Will Wade and what he did this offseason at NC State. He's clearly going for it this year. He brought in a pretty talented transfer class, Trey Holloman, Allen Breed, Terrence Arsenault from Houston, who I really, really like. I thought that Terrence was maybe underperforming at Houston, but he saw a ton of minutes. He was a 20-plus minute per game guy, just didn't score at the level maybe that you would have hoped that he did for Houston. But Darian Williams, Texas Tech, Van Allen Lubin, North Carolina goes right down the road. Some big names going to NC State.
Yeah, no question about it. And I know that NC State is getting all the love out there in the ACC, and rightfully so. But I also think that Virginia had a really nice offseason as well. They hire on Ryan Odom. I feel like they've done a tremendous job in the transfer portal. And while NC State is catching all the attention, I feel like Virginia might be in for a very big year this year. We'll talk about that with our good friend Paul on the flip side. And additionally, we'll open it up to him. What are some of the teams that he's taking a look at that he thinks could be in for some big seasons? That's up next, right here on Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Peterson, now a part of the VSiN Family Podcast.
Coverage varies by plan. View contracts and exclusions at endurancewarranty.com.
If you're driving a car or truck with an expired warranty and suddenly lost your transmission or needed a full engine repair, would a $4,000 repair bill leave you stranded? I'm Danica Patrick. Don't get caught off guard with a vehicle breakdown. Choose the company I trust. Endurance. No matter the mileage, if your vehicle is less than 20 years old, Endurance offers comprehensive auto protection plans for any budget. Protection on the drivetrain, electrical, transmission, AC, and more. Plus, benefits like 24/7 roadside assistance and rental car reimbursement on any plan. Endurance handles everything, from making the claim, through the repair process, to paying the certified mechanic of your choice. Don't get caught off guard with a vehicle breakdown. Act now and get 1 full year of elite benefits. A $2,000 value, free.
Visit EnduranceWarranty.com for your fast free quote today. That's EnduranceWarranty.com.
And we're back here in lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Peterson, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. Great to be rejoined by Paul Fritschner. He does such a tremendous job with the Rebound Rundown Podcast. He does a great job taking a look at all things Xavier athletics as well. He, all 12 months of the year, doing a great job paying attention to the sport that we all know and love of college basketball. You're able to follow him on Twitter/X at his first and last name, Paul Fritschner. Last name is spelled Fritschner. And Paul left off talking about NC State and how they're in for a big year, but how about if we take a look at another team out there in the ACC? I really like what I've seen out of Virginia this offseason, and I feel like with Virginia, they hit a home run with Ryan Odom as a hire. Very ironic. He's the first ever 16 seed to knock off a 1, and then he joins that 1 seeds program many years later, so that's good, clean fun right there. But that said, bringing in Malik Thomas, bringing in Jakari White, bringing in Dallin Hall, I look at this roster, Ogana Onyesu, who I think that's a nice upside get down low as well. And I think that a lot of people are sleeping on Virginia because they're all taking a look at NC State. They're getting all the bells and whistles out there in the ACC. But I could see a world where Virginia honestly has just a ton of success in year number 1. And I really believe in what Odom is building over there with the Virginia Cavaliers.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. And I think, and Yenso, you mentioned that he didn't find his footing at Kentucky, but he spent 2 years there. Didn't really find his footing at Kansas State either for all the money that they spent this past season. We don't need to rehash that. Everybody that's listening to this probably aware of what Kansas State's situation was this past season, spent a ton of money on that roster, and it didn't pan out. But he finds himself at Virginia. Now Ryan Odom, who's bounced around a little bit, but he's had a ton of success everywhere he's been. He's at the high major level. He's at Virginia. And look, this roster, Dallin Hall at the top, all these guys have played double-digit minutes per game. You're talking about Dallin Hall, who was almost 25 minutes a game at BYU. Jakari White, over 30 minutes a game at North Dakota State. Malik Thomas, over 31 minutes a game at San Francisco. So you have guys that have played a lot and that are very experienced. He kind of went the other way, where some of these teams went younger. Dallin Hall, Jakari White, Malik Thomas, Devin Tillis, Ugana and Yenso, all these guys, seniors or grad transfers.
Yep, and I think that is an interesting dynamic, and I think that's big in this day and age in terms of trying to be able to win right away. And we've seen it with a guy like a TJ Alzenberger. I still go back to this. That Iowa State team, prior to him taking over, had won 2 games the previous year, both against SWAC teams, and then they win 2 games in the NCAA tournament. And I do think that is such a big change in this day and age with this landscape of college basketball because, Paul, I feel like you know this as well as I do. It used to be that you used to get a full recruiting cycle to see your worth as a coach. Now a lot of programs aren't going to be able to afford that anymore. I think that it is such an interesting line that is being towed, and it is nice, in my opinion, to see schools like Xavier and Villanova having a pair of guys that are looking to build for multiple years rather than just one, because I do feel like the pressure for these guys to win right away is greater than it's ever been before.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. And I think when you look at how college basketball is going to take shape this upcoming season, the haves and the have-nots are certainly going to separate themselves. And I know everybody was concerned this past season about no Cinderellas in the NCAA tournament, the cream rising to the top of all this talent that has shown itself out, the 4 1 seeds making the Final Four, all of that. I'll be honest, Greg, I think it could keep happening. I really think that the way the SEC separated itself this past season, I know you're going to get mid-major teams that are talented. You're going to get teams that maybe upset, a 14-3 type of game in the NCAA tournament. But I'm on the other side from a lot of people that think the madness of March was just a lapse this season. I don't really know. I'm trying to think of how best to say this, Greg. I don't know why or what data you could use to prove the other way, because the way that these teams are building rosters right now, it makes it so hard for these teams at the mid-major level to be competitive multiple games in the NCAA tournament. Yeah, I'm sure there'll be a bad shooting day for a 3 seed or a 4 seed. Sure. I'm not saying that those days are completely behind us, but these days of like Davidson, and maybe Davidson's not the greatest example because they were 12 seed, I think,
10 seed,
a 10. Yeah, even better. They played. Was it Wisconsin in the?
They
first
did
round?
play Wisconsin.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Well, that's a pull off the top of my head there, but 10 seed, got the seed wrong, got the team right. But you're just thinking about these teams that upset and made runs. Maybe Davidson's not the best example. It's hard for me to see some of these mid-major teams consistently making runs going forward. Maybe I'm overreacting, but I think the talent level of college basketball at the top, these coaches shifting around, it's really becoming the minor leagues. And it's incentivizing players to stay in college, which I think helps the game. But at the same time, it does make it more challenging for the have-nots to consistently make the NCAA tournament. The spots just aren't there. And I'm not advocating for expansion, but if you just look at the fact that the SEC gets 13 teams in, 14 teams in, then the Big Ten gets double-digit teams in, then you look at the ACC, there's just less bids available to where an Indiana State or a UC Irvine or one of these teams that, might be deserving in 2015 or 16, they're just going to find themselves on the outside looking in.
Yep, I do agree with you there. It's been a little bit more difficult even for a conference like the Atlantic 10, for example. And we saw the Mountain West a few years ago get 5 teams into the NCAA tournament. I do not know if they're going to be able to quite get that moving forward, as we do have Paul Fritschner, who does great work over at the Rebound Rundown Podcast, joining me on Coast to Coast Hoops. And I want to open this up to you a little bit because we've talked a little bit about some of these first and second year coaches, few teams out there in the Big East. This is dealer's choice, no specific conference or anything like that. Who's just a team or two that, as you've been evaluating them during the offseason, you just are feeling better about them as you dive in a little bit further, and you're just feeling bullish about them for the upcoming season? I really like what Ben McCollum is doing at Iowa. I think Iowa could have a decent season this season just because of what they're doing with him. I like Ben McCollum as a coach a lot. And so when you look at what he did this year, Brendan Hawson, who went from Villanova to Kansas State, brought a bunch of guys over from Drake. But that Drake team, you could say, Paul, he really just brought Drake to Iowa. Well, that Drake team this year, Greg, was really good. And I don't think you should overlook what they can do to translate their game up to that level. So I'm interested to see what's going to happen with Iowa this upcoming season. And then another team, maybe just kind of thinking off the top of my head, we already talked about NC State, so I won't go back down that road. We talked about Virginia. The biggest question mark to me
And it's just because, of course, they're a buzz name. They are, and I'm not talking about Maryland and Buzz Williams. It's Indiana. What can Coach Darian DeVries do with this Indiana team? Players from all over the country, Connor Enright from DePaul, Nick Dorn from Elon, but Sam Alexis from Florida. You have Tucker DeVries coming back, his son, Lamar Wilkinson from Sam Houston State. Indiana has the makings, to me, of a team and the experience for sure. Let's just see what they can do. I'm keeping my eye on two Big Ten teams, Indiana and Iowa.
Yep, I do think that those two teams are going to be very rock solid. And we were talking a lot about first-year head coaches, and I thought that they both had home run hires. And I'll give a shout out to Minnesota as well. Nico Medved. I think that that's a great hire. Fortunately for Minnesota, it might take them a little bit longer to be able to hit the ground running than Iowa along with Indiana, but certainly the Big Ten did a great job in terms of their hiring cycle, and we did a great job in terms of our guest search here today with bringing you aboard, Paul, because you do such an amazing job taking a look at this great game that we all know and love of college basketball. Love to get people at home know what's all on tap for you and how people can follow along on social media and other platforms.
You've mentioned it a couple of times, the Rebound Rundown. That's a podcast that I do that people can find where I cover college basketball. It mostly centers on the Midwest and the Cincinnati area, but for sure takes a look around the country as well. Half the show is Cincinnati, the Cincinnati area teams, and then half the show is national. So if you want a little bit of flavor of both, it's a daily show during the season, and it's just about weekly here in the off season, doing a coach's tour here with some more coaches coming up here in July and August. So for sure, give that a look.
Absolutely. And Paul, he does such an amazing job of being able to look at this game all 12 months out of the year. And I know that he's doing great work getting prepared for the upcoming season. So big thanks to Paul for joining me on Coast to Coast Hoops, now part of the VSiN family of podcasts. And if you do like what you're hearing from this fine podcast, Coast to Coast Hoops, you're able to subscribe wherever your podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, and TuneIn. If you have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you do have one of two ways we offer those in. First one is my Twitter /X timeline at gunit_81. Keep in mind, letters CM, naming does not matter, so as per usual, please do send these into the timeline. And the other way is find an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated. And then from there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review. And because we've got so many teams that decipher in college basketball, 364 in total, I'm with you guys every single day on this podcast, regular season and off season. Expect a lot more conference previews coming in the next few weeks. We've been sort of lagging behind a little bit there, so we will get those.
If your job at a healthcare facility includes disinfecting against viruses, you know prevention is the best medicine. And maintaining healthy spaces starts with a healthy cleaning routine. Grainger's world-class supply chain helps ensure you have the quality products you need when you need them. From disinfectants and cleaning supplies to personal protective equipment, so you can help deliver a clean bill of health. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.